Okay, so in this video, we're going to discuss Nathanson's arguments against the death penalty. As a reminder, last time we saw Primoratz's arguments for the death penalty. This time we're going to consider the arguments against the death penalty. He points out, Nathanson's first point is that to be a retributivist could mean two different things. You could be an equality retributivist or a proportional retributivist. Equality retributivism, this is basically what Primoratz is, right? This says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We're gonna match equal crime with equal punishment. We're gonna make you pay precisely how you caused harms, right? Okay. Nathanson has a couple of objections here, right? He thinks that equality retributivism does not work, right? For two main reasons. Number one, he says eye for an eye cannot be serious. You really can't sincerely mean that, right? So, because if you did sincerely mean it, it would mean something like this. Suppose that someone came and kidnapped my child. As a punishment, I would need to kidnap their child, right? That would be equality. If someone, tortured my family, right, then I would need to torture their family? That doesn't seem right. What do they have to do with it? So that can't be the serious proposal, right? It cannot mean equal crime. We're not going to do to you exactly what you've done unto someone else, because there are times when that just does not make sense, right? So that cannot be the serious proposal, right? It just doesn't make sense. And, well, maybe what instead is meant is we need equal harm. And this sounds a little bit more like Primoratz, right? Primoratz says, well, the only way that you can answer the harm of the loss of a human life is with a human life, right? It's the only way you can fully answer it. But Nathanson's worried about this as well. He says, for example, he raises several points. So one is, should we do really horrible things to those who cause horrible harm? Right? I don't know. So like say someone does torture my entire family. That's a lot of harm. Should I torture them? Say they torture my family, each member of my family for a day. That's four people tortured for a day. Should I torture them in response for 4 days? Is that equal? Or, maybe the equal harm is 7 days? I don't know. Like, what is that really something we want the government doing? Is torturing people as a punishment? That seems bad, right? Another thing is, like, how do we even measure the harm? There are cases of crimes which are really difficult to understand how you would even measure the harm, right? A crime of like a white-collar crime where someone does a lot of, I'm forgetting the term right now, embezzling, that's the term, where they embezzle a lot of funds or something, right, like that, which causes problems to a company, which causes a ton of people to lose their jobs. How do you measure that harm, right? Or of a plane hijacking, right? Or of spying or something like that, right? How do you even measure the harm that does? It seems really difficult to do, let alone figuring out something that's going to be equal as an equal way to pay that back. Finally, there are individual preferences. Right? Maybe, if a criminal doesn't like bananas, like maybe that's the food that we make him or her eat, as a way to make sure that they're getting the harm that they need. Or, maybe they don't care that much about physical pain, but the mental pain really gets to them, and so we need to like start tailoring punishments to the individual likes and preferences of a criminal to make sure that the harm is equal. Nathanson just thinks this is not practical. It's not going to work. It's going to be really challenging to do. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be a workable sort of approach here. Okay, so he thinks that equality retributivism is not quite going to work. Right? So he thinks that if we're going to be retributivists, as Primoratz still would want to be, we should be proportional retributivists. So I'm going to erase this from here to sort of explain what proportional retributivism is. Basically, proportional retributivism says we can make two lists, right? We can make a list of all the crimes and a list of all the punishments. So, up here at the top of the crimes list are very minor crimes like, I don't know, jaywalking, speeding. Maybe here's the white collar crimes, financial crimes. Maybe here is minor violent crimes. And here's, major violent crimes. Right? Including murder and stuff like that. Right? And then we make a list of punishments. So, warnings, and community service, and fines, maybe prison time, etc. And then, death is somewhere down here, right? Okay, what Nathanson points out is that if we become, one other thing before I mention this, right? And then what you do is you just, you sort of just line up the crimes with the punishments, right? And you say the worst crimes receive the worst punishments, right? And the least bad crimes receive the least bad punishments, right? Whatever those may be. Okay. What's interesting and what's noteworthy here is we get to decide what's on the punishments list, right? Because notice, we've drawn a line here already. In the United States, we don't allow torture. We don't allow, I don't know, what's the thing where they used to put your head in the thing, We don't mind, or we don't allow social mocking. We don't do public executions anymore. There's all sorts of things we don't do, right, that we could do, right? So we've already sort of drawn a line in the sand where we say that's too much. That's too much of a penalty. That's too much of a punishment. We're not okay with that one. But what Nathanson says is that means, therefore, that we could just move that line up, right, and say death is just too much, right? And then you would just say, well, the worst crimes still get lined up with the worst punishments, and so now major violent crimes just get prison time, right, rather than death, right? And maybe still minor violent crimes get prison time, but a little bit less, and so on and so forth, right? Because this list is sort of arbitrary, we get to decide where we draw that line, right? Now, what's interesting is that doesn't tell us yet why we should draw that line above death, right? But Nathanson points out that we could draw that line above death, right? That is to say, we could make death a penalty that we don't include, right? One step too far, we could make it. But that's a decision we'd have to make, right? Okay, so then he gives us two reasons why he thinks we should do this, right? Why we should be moving that punishment line, right? Basically getting rid of the death penalty. Let me resolve this here. Two reasons to abolish the death penalty. One is he says it would be good for the government to show respect for human dignity. Right? What he says basically is this: certain rights just never go away. Right? We assume that even for the worst criminals in the United States, we have it enshrined in our Constitution that even for the worst criminals, you cannot be punished cruelly. Right? Cruel and unusual punishment is just not allowed, right? You're not allowed to be starved to death. We just don't allow that in the United States. Even if you've done a terrible, terrible crime, we don't allow it, right? That right doesn't go away. We assume that there's some basic fundamental human dignity here. Right? And Nathanson says, why not assume the same thing about the death penalty, right? We're not saying that you did something good. We're not saying that you're a good person. We're just saying that there's this basic level of human dignity that says, yes, you get to still eat. Yes, you get to still have human contact. Yes, you get to do X, Y, and Z. That's just part of basic human dignity. So Nathanson says it would be a good, positive respect for human dignity to get rid of the death penalty. Okay? That's one reason he thinks it should be done. And then the other one is to set a good example. It would show restraint. Right? He thinks the government could show restraint here, right? Constantly, when the citizens look out at society, we see people, fighting back, right? Someone insults you and you insult them back. Someone punches you, you punch them back, right? But he says this is a chance for the government to show us a really good example of how to not, hit back, right? How not to shout back, right? Someone does something bad and we're going to punish them. It's not like we're going to just say, oh yeah, you said sorry and that's it, right? You're still going to be in prison probably for life, but we're not going to kill you, right? We're not gonna do this. It's a way of showing restraint, right? And so Nathanson thinks that it's worth moving that line up past death, right? So that death is a punishment that's too far, something we don't accept. He thinks that would be better for our society. Okay, that's all for this time. Next time we will discuss affirmative action. All right, bye.